My name is Father Kevin Huber, the Parish Administrator, and with our Associate Pastor, Father Frank, and our entire Parish community, and welcome you here to Queen of All Saints for us in the Eucharist. As was written in the bulletin a couple weeks ago, today I want to address to you the issue of conscience. As you all know, the Supreme Court has ruled about the proposed healthcare law, and the bishops, in response, have simply said, I've looked around and haven't found anything more than this. The bishops have said we need to repeal and to continue to work to fix the flaws in the law. But they also want us to continue to be mindful and to be vigilant about religious liberty and the protection of our conscience. So today, in light of that, I want to, since a couple weeks ago I talked to you about religious liberty, I want to share with you some thoughts in light of the gospel about the issue of conscience. Earlier this week, I received a letter, and out of respect for the individual who signed the letter, I'm not going to mention whether it's a male or a female, or who the person is. However, the letter was very quick, it was very succinct, but it was very, very direct. It said this: Dear Father Huber, I will no longer be attending Queen of All Saints, nor will I attend any other Catholic church. I have had it with the contraception mandate, and I think it's a lot to do about nothing. I have always believed in artificial contraception, and I will always believe in artificial contraception, and I also believe in the day after pill. And then the person signed it and said, P.S. Please do not contact me about this issue. Now, my very first response was one of complete shock and dismay. And then my second response was one of great sadness. Because I realized that there were a couple of different things that really concerned me from this letter. First was, the obvious stuff, the person's position on artificial contraception and the person's position on the day after pill. That the third concern that caught my attention was that the author of this letter completely missed the whole issue that the church has been raising about religious liberty. But the most distressful and the most concerning issue for me is the division that it's caused. There's now a tremendous division, not just in our nation, not just in our church, but really in the family of God. And those, my friends, are very, very serious issues. And that's why you and I need to pay special attention to the gospel passage that we hear from the Gospel of Mark. There's a very, very critical lesson to consider. First, we have to take into consideration that there are two people who are really, really hurting. First, we hear about the influential, wealthy, powerful man who's distraught because his daughter is sick and near death. And he has absolutely no control over her situation. And he is afraid that she will die. And then we have a woman who has been bleeding for 12 years. She probably as well was once a wealthy woman who had lots of influence. But over the years, she has spent all of her money on doctors without any kind of success, without any kind of cure. Now, Mark is making a really powerful comparison here. He is contrasting two complete opposites to make a point. First, he has one person is male, one person is female. One person is healthy, one person is sick. One person is wealthy, and one person is poor. One person is ritually clean, one person is ritually impure. But notice, despite their complete, total differences, despite the fact that they're really opposites, they both end up at the same place to find what they're looking for. They both go to the Lord for healing. That's where they find what they're really looking for. They go to Jesus for healing. Mark's message here is very, very clear, and it's very transformative, and it's very simple. Jesus restores. You and I need to hear that from Mark because he wants us to understand that Jesus restores. He changes sickness to health. He transforms death to life. He brings unity to division. And my friends, this is where you and I need to return. This is where our nation needs to return. Earlier this week, I was forwarded a YouTube video, and there was a priest who was the chaplain for the Colorado state legislator. And after as he was offering the prayer for a particular convention, he stood up and he said, the controversy in our nation is not liberal versus conservative. It's not about Republicans versus Democrats. It is about socialism versus communism. And I was compelled by his argument. And he really is right. There's lots of socialistic nuances in this whole picture. And you and I need to be clear that the church has always condemned socialism. If you go to your catechism and you look at Article 2425, you will see that the church condemns communism. It's very, very clear. It says this. The church has rejected the totalitarian, and aesthetic ideologies associated in modern times with communism or socialism. But I'm going to take that even further. And what I'm going to propose is that the Supreme Court, even though it has ruled, we need to go to the master to restore our nation that has become divided, not by Republicans and Democrats, not by conservatives or liberals, but by a complete and total disregard for the conscience. And I want you to be clear about what the church understands as conscience. We don't hear much about it. All we hear about conscience is just this voice in our head that says, what's right or what's wrong. But the church has so much more in her rich tradition to say about that. And I want you to hear, if you were to go home today and open up your catechism of the Catholic Church, and you were to turn to Article 1795, these are the things that you would hear. Conscience is a judgment of reason, not what you think, not what you feel. It is a judgment of reason by which the human person recognizes the moral quality of a concrete act. In other words, by use of our reason, we determine what is right and what is wrong, what is true and what is false. The church goes on to say, faced with a moral choice, the conscience can make either a right judgment in accordance with reason and the divine law, or, on the contrary, an erroneous judgment that departs from right judgment or from divine law. A human being must always obey, notice this, always obey the certain judgment of his conscience. The conscience is man's most secret core and his sanctuary. There he is alone with God, whose voice echoes in his depths. And finally, conscience can remain in ignorance or make erroneous judgments. But such ignorance and errors are not always free from guilt. In other words, we have to continue to form our conscience by what is right and about what is right and what is wrong. You and I or our nation, we have lost our way to what's right and wrong. We've lost our way to what's right and just. We've lost our way to what's true and false. And now, my friends, it is time for us to find the way back. And where do we find the way back? It is time for us to return to Christ. It's time for us to follow the light of the nations. It's time for us to listen and obey the one who says, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. And when we accept him, and when we follow him, and when we can when we accept him and when we follow him, then you and I can really live as one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. But that's what it's going to take. It's going to take for us to go back to forming our conscience and coming back to Christ. Religion is not something that we do, it's something that we live. And we need to return to the very foundation of our faith. We need to return to Christ. Whenever I reread this letter, I experience deep sadness because this person is leaving behind the way that leads to freedom. This person is ultimately rejecting who and what has given us freedom. The truth is that now is a tremendous time to be Catholic. Now is a tremendous time for us to give our lives completely to Christ. It's a great time to be a Christian, because today is the day when it's time for us to be witnesses to the truth. And we can, and we need to, so that we can be the great nation again, so that we can be founded on principles of truth and principles of freedom.